everyone. A big welcome back to the Nick Elston Show. It's season 5, episode 16. Wow. We're recording this on a Monday morning. You know my spirit of honesty. I need more caffeine, or I need somebody with a lot of charisma to bring me up. And I've got one today. I've got the amazing Blaire Palmer. Big round of applause. Woo! Woo, woo, woo. This is self-motivation, right?
Okay.
It's not even, I just realized it's not even Monday morning. It's Tuesday morning. I was
going to let that slide.
No, I don't edit at all, to my detriment most of the time. I was at a family funeral yesterday, so it kind of feels like a Monday today because I wasn't in action yesterday. So anyway, we're here, we're firing. I've got an amazing guest to bring you. Blaire is a wonderful person. We've been connected for many, many years now, and we'll probably go into that throughout as well and where our paths crossed. But I guess most importantly, the reason why I kind of reconnected and reached out to Blaire to come on is because a lot of you tuning in right now are people, and there are not many more better people than Blaire Palmer. And we both write for HR Zone. We do a lot of work in the space, but from two very different kind of angles and objectives. So I work very much as a non-solution focused person. I don't coach. I don't kind of train or advise. You wouldn't want that, trust me. My work is sharing the lived experience, whereas Blaire is a professional doing this and has done so for many, many years. So, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest build-up ever I've ever given anybody on this show was Blaire Palmer. Woo!
Hi.
Hello. You all right?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you.
Good. So tell us, people know who you are now. If they're not, they haven't been listening for the last 3-minute preamble. But tell us what you do, where you're from, that kind of thing.
Okay, so for the last 22 years, I've been coaching, provoking, challenging senior leaders and their teams to figure out how do we lead in this fast-changing, unpredictable, uncertain world that we're in. And 20 years ago, it seemed like, wow, things are changing so fast. I mean, if only I had realized 20 years on what the picture would be and how much more uncertain and unpredictable things were. So that's really what I've been doing for that period of time. And so I spend my time working in real businesses, as you said, designing and running change and leadership programs, culture change programs and leadership programs, which, by the way, are basically the same thing. And then speaking about change and about leadership and trying to inspire audiences about the kind of leadership that I think is essential now, but absolutely there'll be no option in future but to start rethinking leadership. So that's me. But previous to that, I was a BBC journalist. So the first 10 years of my life, I was a journalist, and then big life change, and I've been doing this for nearly 22 years.
That's a hell of a throw-in. That's a hell of an aside to throw in.
Yeah,
I'm also a BBC journalist. Boom. So our paths first crossed through the world of business networking, and namely BNI, Business Networking International. I was a whole different lifetime ago. I was doing something completely different in a completely different headspace as well. But again, through that kind of period, that you've always stood out to me as one of the standout professionals in the network, people that you can trust, and people that I really enjoyed meeting along the way as well. And people always had nice things to say about you. I think that's always a good judge of character, when other people tell you things about other people, which are nice when they don't really have to.
Yeah, I agree. And, that in the end, that's where networking starts. I started doing BNI, and, this business networking and breakfast networking and all of that has quite a poor reputation. And I think if you don't expect much from it, you don't get much from it. But because I started at BNI before I'd even left the BBC, so I would go to a business breakfast at 6:45 in the morning and then go to my job at the BBC. And I did that for about 6 months before I eventually handed in my resignation. So that was a really early experience. And the BNI philosophy is give as gain, right? So you get what you give. The more you give, the more you get. And there's a founding principle for, life. But I mean, just let's limit it to growing a business. that was a pretty important founding principle. I was pretty lucky that I learned that lesson then, because I really threw myself into it. I was enthusiastic. I was really young, and I could get up at that time in the morning and be fine doing a full shift at the BBC afterwards, So it was all fine. But yeah, really important that. And those relationships, I mean, I'm still in touch with a lot of those people now, and I can trace all my big corporate work back to BNI, which might surprise people because they think it's a bunch of, the local plumber and the local builder and the local dentist kind of just fishing in a little pool for local bits of work. It certainly was not that for me.
No, absolutely. And well, even this conversation came from that point. We didn't know that at the time. And like I said, these things just happen, and you never know where this conversation goes and who it reaches. So I think there's something in that. I think you've mentioned a few things that are absolutely rabbit holes we can dive down already. I think you mentioned initially that kind of the change and also that kind of period of like constant change, working in an uncertain world. I think change suffers with the same kind of terminology kind of fate as mental health, that we always assume mental health is negative when it's just a neutral state. And I think when it comes to change, we do exactly the same. We always assume change is going to be negative. So there's that resistance to change, isn't there? Do you think it's about changing our relationship with change in that sense?
Yeah, I think, funnily enough, human beings are really good at change, typically. If you think about a human being's life, right? We'll leave school and get our first job. We'll move house or buy a house. We'll go into a relationship. We'll get married. We'll have kids. We'll buy a dog. We maybe go and work abroad. Or even going to a holiday destination that we've never been to before is a form of change. Excuse me. And so humans do this all the time. And we learn and grow all the time. I think when we have this idea of resistance to change, there's a couple of things that are going on there. Firstly, change, because it's the unknown, humans are wary of the unknown, typically, and rightly so, because they don't know how they're going to do. They're embarking on something they don't know how it's going to play out. They don't necessarily trust that they have what it takes to be able to ride that wave. So, of course, there's some trepidation. But that wouldn't be enough to stop people, I don't think, because they make change in their lives all the time. But I think that when we see resistance to change, particularly in a business environment, we need to be more curious about that and not just put it down to, people don't like change. What if we assume people are all right with change, but it's this change they don't like, or they don't trust, or they don't trust you to lead this change? That is much more interesting. And so when I'm working in organizations around change and people are doing what often people do, which is to find the flaws in the plan, or to find the flaws in the person leading the plan, or whatever it might be, or just even to agree absolutely logically this is the right thing to do, but then still not do it. When I see that, I think we need to find out more, because there's normally something in there that's very, very important to understand. And if we dismiss it as, people just don't like change, then we're missing something very important, something that, there could be something wrong with the plan, and there very often is, because the plan is made by people who don't necessarily know how that's going to play out for everybody, and haven't really listened properly.
So kind of the implementation of change, I guess, maybe. So with the leadership element, given the backdrop of the past 2.5 years, I guess from a two-pronged attack, from a leadership point of view, it's a lot more difficult to generalize when it comes to leadership now, isn't it? That everyone in a room full of 20 people, 20 different experiences of where they are in life and business right now, 20 different, maybe strong opinions. We do live in a very passive aggressive society right now. A lot of strong opinions, a lot of platforms to share those opinions. So it can be difficult to lead, I guess, from the conversations I've had. But from an employee point of view, or a people point of view generally, actually to the backdrop of the past 2.5 years, that relationship they may have had with change has been amplified by we've suddenly been kind of conditioned to expect the worst after having a kind of barrage of lockdown, Brexit, kind of everything else has happened along the way.
Yeah.
So I think then it comes back down to kind of your kind of stomping ground, really, isn't it? It's culture essentially, and how we shape that.
Yeah. So one of the things that's been happening quite consistently over the last 10 or more years is we're losing trust, we're losing faith in authority figures. So in the past, if your boss at work said to you, it's all right, you're in safe hands, I've got this, we know what we're going to do, then you would feel reassured. You're like, okay, the boss has got it, you know, we just do what we're told and it's all going to work out fine. Now, when the boss or the prime minister or whoever it might be says, don't worry, everybody, we've got it, you're in safe hands, we're like, I'm sorry, but I have no evidence to believe that is true. You haven't given me any reason to think that you know what you're doing. And the bottom line is that they don't know what they're doing. And it's not just because there's something wrong with them. I mean, I don't particularly trust a lot of the leaders that we see, particularly in politics these days. But it's not even about that. Who could possibly know what the right thing is to do right now? Nobody, because it's the Wild West, because we've never been here before. You know, who knows what kind of businesses and what kind of organizational structure and what kind of positioning in the market is going to end up being the right one. What we do know is the sort of standard hierarchical command and control, conventional business isn't doing great. You know, the sort of constant drive for efficiency, constant drive to get more out of people, measuring people's contribution by how many hours they're doing, measuring people's keystrokes, which is one of the bits of tech that exists today. It's all very industrial age ways of thinking about things. And so we need to rethink that. But we're at the beginning of, one of the things I say in my keynote is, Isambard Kingdom Brunel didn't sit atop one of his bridges thinking, I expect, in 200 years, they'll probably have Taco Tuesdays. He couldn't possibly have anticipated how the industrial age was going to play out because he was at the beginning of it. And we're at the beginning of this, and we don't know how it's going to play out. And therefore, we don't trust leaders who say, don't worry, you're in safe hands. I know exactly how to do this. We'd be better off with leaders who said, let's try and work this out together. I'm open to ideas. My job is to listen and then to make sense of the input. And then let's get started with something and we'll tweak it as we go. And we're much more likely to trust that.
I think you're right, absolutely. And also I think it's the assumptions that we need to check in on as well. And I think that's why people like yourself, actually, it's really important for industries, businesses to have an outside kind of pair of eyes and a voice kind of looking at this, because you get a different perspective. Do you find that, I certainly find this myself in what I do, that being outside going into an organization, for some reason, you suddenly get more trust and buy-in than one of their own talking to them about the same kind of thing?
Yes, you do. Yeah. And it must be frustrating for the people internally, especially if they've been saying this for a while. And then you come in and you're like, oh, and everyone's like, oh my God, it's so amazing, amazing. And the little person who's been saying it for the last 5 years, who's the one that brought you in, is sitting there going, hello. Anyway, it must be. But that is one of the benefits of bringing someone in, because they can say things that are more difficult to say when you're internal. At the end of the day, if they don't, well, they don't have to see me all the time. If I've been irritating, if I've called something out that is uncomfortable for people, they then don't need to report into me the next day. And so it is a bit safer for me to be more direct. It's why I'm there and why I'm being paid. But yeah, I mean, what I'm always trying to do, and I think anyone who does the sort of work that I do should be trying to do, is to push all the ownership and accountability and responsibility onto the people internally. It's more than 10 years ago now, I did my first big organizational change project, 2,400 people, 3 legacy businesses, and they wanted one unifying culture. They wanted to take the best of their 3 cultures and make that into the new culture. It was a massive project for my business. And so we did that, and it was really, really effective. We worked with them for about 18 months, really, really effective. We ran workshops for every single person in that business, multiple workshops. And then we left, and then it started falling apart. The CEO moved on, and a couple of other key people moved on. And, when we checked in sort of 6 months later, things had kind of reverted back. And I was very frustrated. They'd spent a lot of money, and we worked really, really hard. And I realized, well, that's because we were the ones doing the change. We were running the workshops. We were the ones inspiring people to do things differently. They were really inspired when we were there, and then we were gone. And actually what I've learned since is it cannot be me that's the one that's inspiring change. I need to be the one inspiring the leaders, and the leaders drive the change. That means when I go, the leaders are still spinning those plates. And that's what I say to clients all the time. I say, when I see you spinning the plates for yourself, I can go. And it's a silly business model, really, because at the point at which I'm successful, I'm out of the project. It's tempting to not make it work, but you have to do that. So yeah, I think that's why leadership programs and culture change programs are the same thing. Because if you want to change your culture, you need to develop leaders, and they'll own that, and they'll drive that, and they'll see their role and responsibility around that, and they'll take it seriously. And if you want to improve the quality of your leadership, you're going to end up changing the culture.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
They end up being the same thing.
It's interesting you mentioned you train people to do what you do, and I really get that, and it's something that we've kind of called out a couple of times throughout the seasons on the show around. One of the questions you get asked is, so through the kind of Find Your Voice programs that are run around public speaking, so away from the mental health stuff about speaking, coaching, that kind of stuff, it's about delivering kind of emotional stories, not presentation skills, as you'll be very aware. I think, why do I coach people to become my competition? Actually, the answer is, it's my way of creating legacy. And I think that very much in terms of how you do what you do, you're coaching people to become effective leaders, so that actually you're not needed in that organization. That's legacy, actually. And I think some things mean more than business. And I think especially when there's a personal attachment with people that work in the people space, I've found as a generalism, tend to be in the space because they've either had really poor experiences of being looked after, supported, or cared for before, or people indirectly have had those experiences for their family and friends. How did you get into the business of people?
Yeah, well, it's exactly that. So when I was at the BBC, I'd wanted to be a journalist for a long time, since I was very little. And so there I was, a producer I was a producer on the Today programme on Radio 4. Then I went on to be a producer on Women's Hour on Radio 4. And I was like, well, these are the jobs that I had dreamt of when I was doing student radio or whatever it was. But I was really, really unhappy, hated it. And it wasn't the work itself. I mean, it's hardly ever the work itself. It was the environment, it was the culture. And particularly at the Today programme, and I do talk about this in the keynote, it was a very aggressive, macho culture. I mean, the number of times that the news editor, walked past my desk and pointed at me and said, "You're fired." Now I wasn't fired, but I'd made a mistake, or he just didn't like me that day, or, wow. He stuck a Post-it to my back at one point that said, "I'm Satan's mistress." And he told me not to take the Post-it off until I'd found a guest for the show.
Awful.
Yeah. He came up behind me and stuck this Post-it on, and I was like, "What's this? Okay, put that back on. Don't take it off until you found a guest." So this was the culture, right?
Wow.
So, you know, who you can't be inspired. You can't do your best work. You don't want to do your best work. You know, it's very, very unhealthy place. It certainly was then. So that is absolutely my motivation. Yes, I care about business. I very much care about business being a force for good in the world. I think it can be. I think that it has to be. You know, it's probably a bigger influence on the world that we live in than governments. You know, if you think about just how we live, how we work, it kind of defines how we live.
Yeah.
And so therefore, the cultures that we work in define our society culture. If people by and large do work that they find meaningful or rewarding, or at least where they feel appreciated, then I mean the work might be, you know, I put this in this and then it goes on. Yeah, the work itself might not be meaningful, but the friendships, the recognition, the reward and appreciation, feeling like your voice is heard, all of these things. If we had a world where people felt that about their work, we would live in a very different world than the world we live in. In actual fact, we live in a world where primarily people don't feel valued in their work, and they don't feel that they have a voice, and they don't feel that they trust the people that are managing and leading them. And they take that into their everyday world.
Yeah, absolutely.
They take that into everything. They take that into the way they raise their children, not to trust the man and all this kind of thing. So it absolutely impacts our world. So, but ultimately, I just want people to enjoy the work they do. I want them to, they work so hard. I want them to rock up in the morning thinking, this is going to be good. This is good. And when they get home, I want them to think, that was great. Yeah, I had a big day today. I mean, ultimately, that's what it is for me.
I think that's huge. And I love your approach. And I think that very often the objection can be, if somebody is looking to kind of, I don't know, branch out into professional speaking, whatever that may be, they kind of think there has to be either a passion or a commercial success. And actually, that doesn't have to be the choice. You could choose that way, but that'd be your choice. You could be very successful commercially, and that funds you to be more passionate to more people. I think that's really important to recognize that the commercials are absolutely crucial. And I love what I do. I very often love the business of what I do, not always. But I think it's important to kind of set that ecosystem. So I'm very open about this with my kind of corporate pricing. It's on the very much the higher end, but it subsidizes my work in the prison system and education system. And then collectively, it allows me to donate time for organizations and charities and stuff. So therefore, I still get that kick of why I got into doing this in the first place.
Yeah.
But we can still be commercially successful. And I think, especially in the UK, I found that, like yourself, I believe that I work also like in the US and stuff. And we've got this real kind of weird relationship with kind of money here. And by being more commercially successful, we can reach more people. So there is that kind of point, isn't there? That, yeah, absolutely passion for people doesn't have to be a separate thing from commercial success too.
I agree. I think, you know, sometimes when I'm working with baby coaches or talking to baby coaches, you know, people that are embarking on the thing, you know, we start talking about money, and I've been through this myself, so I do recognize it. There is this thing of, oh, well, I just love it so much, you know, I don't really do it for the money. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a big problem, right? Because firstly, when you give it away or you don't charge commercial rates for it, you undermine everybody else who is trying to make a living out of it. I mean, you know, there are people who don't need to make a living out of it, either because they're independently wealthy or because their husband, wife, whoever it is the primary breadwinner. And for them, it's just a bit of pocket money, and that's very nice. However, I'm a single parent, and I am the only breadwinner in this family. So I have to make enough money to send my kid to university at the end of the day and to have a retirement, you know, and be able to afford a care home when I go see them. So, you know, it's actually crucial that I can charge a decent amount for what I do. And when people give it away, they undermine my ability to make a living out of it. They force everybody to do it as a hobby. And I noticed this a little while ago because we got some chickens. And so I was on a chicken owners Facebook group, and I was asking people how much they charge for their eggs. And I felt it should be a premium product because, I mean, there's the chickens and here's the eggs, right? And they're all free range and it's lovely. And other people were saying, why are you doing that? It's just nice when people enjoy the eggs. I'm like, well, no wonder no one can make money out of farming then, because you're giving your eggs away.
Absolutely.
So why would anyone pay for eggs if they can get it for free? So I think there's that element to it. It doesn't make any sense, doesn't support an industry.
So are you truly being heard in life and in business? And think about that genuinely. If the answer to that is no, then you've found the right event. If you want to give yourself that boost personally and professionally, come along to Find Your Voice Live. This will change your life. This will be the game changer that you've been looking for.
It provides me with the confidence in myself to prove to myself that I can do it, I can get up on stage, I can speak.
There's absolutely nothing to be nervous about with these events. It's very, very open, very, very relaxed.
Help my confidence go from here at the beginning of the day to here at the end of the day.
Hey everyone, my name is Nick Elston. I'm an inspirational speaker on the lived experience of mental health and a transformational speaking coach. I'm the founder of Forging People, and Find Your Voice Live is our flagship event where we cross the boundaries of personal development, mental health, transformation, and public speaking. Your ability to speak, to deliver any message to any audience with clarity and power and emotion will have an ultimately defining impact on your success by your own definition of that really subjective term. Speaking is life, speaking is business, speaking is education, and that's the thing that we focus on most. What I find is that people are here for many, many different reasons. Some people do absolutely want to be a stage speaker or a professional speaker. Some people want to be able to represent their business or to lead a team or inspire a movement or create a story. But even actually, some people want to be here just because they want to be heard at home. Maybe they don't feel their opinions being heard, that they can't say yes to the things they want to say yes to or no to the things they want to say no to. Again, this is where personal development meets mental health, meets public speaking to create a real positive impact. At the end of Find Your Voice Live, you will walk away with massive confidence around delivering your message. The ability to stand up and deliver means you will enhance your self-esteem in an amazing way. You will also have the skills and tools and tips and techniques to not only deliver a presentation, but to structure a presentation, to find your audience, to be able to deliver emotional storytelling to help your audience feel and make them want to be part of your tribe, make them want to be part of your following, and really tune into what you're truly about, to truly make yourself heard in life and in business. If you're sat on the fence, if you're still not sure, take the model that I use, say yes, worry about it later, and I'll make sure that you're looked after brilliantly. Myself and my team will make sure that you have an amazing day, a transformational day that will have the desired positive impact that you want to achieve.
But there's another piece which is to do with value. And this is the bit that is difficult for people, is to be able to say, there's genuine financial value. So if we think about the culture where we brought the three legacy businesses together, although in the end things did sort of fall apart a bit, those people that went on to other businesses took that learning with them and they brought that there. So the exponential value of that project was far greater than what I don't know, maybe we charged the client £1 million, right? For that business to get a return of £1 million was nothing, nothing, drop in the ocean. And in fact, we did a leadership program with an organization a couple of years later. And one of the guys who was on the program said, as a result of the program, he's on my show reel, actually, on my leadership show reel. As a result of the program, he added £10 million to the bottom line of the business. That one guy. Well, we only charged probably for the whole program 100,000.
Yeah.
So why would I not charge? It is already the case. I'm not charging for the value.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Why would I go even lower? And I think that's really important from a business perspective in order to have the credibility, you have to understand how business works. If you undervalue yourself, then why would they trust you to know what to do in their business? There's so much to it. But it took me a bit of time to get used to it because we're not great at talking about money, or thinking, well, because I love it, I shouldn't charge so much.
Yeah.
No, hang on a minute. It's not like the greater the sacrifice, the more pain you've had to go through to do the job, the more you're worth. No,
Yeah.
it's not where the value comes from. I killed myself for you, so I get to charge a big amount of money. No.
I think it's that association with kind of personal value as well, isn't it? It depends. We mentioned kind of baby coaches. I love that, by the way, and kind of baby speakers in the same terminology. That very often you see this a lot, that people will act from a position of fear and give themselves away for that reason, and then wonder why the commercial success isn't coming. And I think that's, especially with the speaking world, if you are your material and your content's out there, actually what's to stop anybody else just getting it from YouTube? And that's why you'll never find my content in its entirety in one place, unless it's like you mentioned, that premium product. But I think also fear drives that, doesn't it, as well? So if we feel that, there's no money coming in, we're inclined to go, right, okay, we're going to slash our prices, when actually we should be upping the value in that sense.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Speaking is really interesting because, all these things are a bit intangible. I'm just about to raise my speaking fees, and that's partly because I haven't done it in a while, and partly because I've been speaking for a long time now.
Yeah.
And so I have so much more value to add now than I did at the beginning, and you just have to take that into account.
Absolutely.
You have to know what your worth is in the market. It doesn't do anyone any favors for you to undercharge and to have, then you can only do it part-time, or you only do it as a hobby. And it's very irritating when people say, I love the speaking, and so I speak for free because it generates my other work. Well, that's fine, but then you're not really a speaker. A speaker is somebody who can turn up at an event, having had a 45-minute briefing call, and get that audience activated, get them inspired, get them to go and do something differently as a result of seeing you, and feel differently. That's even more important, actually.
Absolutely.
Feel differently about themselves and about their impact, and then go off and do something with that. And you absolutely need to charge money for that, because that's real value to the business. You've got 300 people leave that room, or 500 people leave that room, able to do something they weren't able to do when they first walked in. Yeah. That's value.
And you mentioned something that's crucial there, and it's something I'm passionate about as well. It's not about necessarily what you say. It is about how you make people feel. And actually, do you leave that room with people wanting to be part of your world, or actually you repelling them? Are they running away like the clappers? And we've all been at those events where you see kind of professional speakers, in the truest sense, they've been paid to be there sometimes, that they'll do a fantastic presentation, then go, right, run to the back of the room, there's only $5,000, lost you straight away, because there's an emotional disconnect, isn't there? And I think people, it's actually, professional speaking, there's a lot of ego attached to it, and very little reality is shared. So I'm really glad we're having this open conversation, because it's something I'm really keen to kind of be open about, actually, the reality of speaking as a trade. And very often, these speakers that you see at the conferences have paid to be there. They've paid for a space, they've paid the organizers. And it's always something I've refused to do quite openly. First of all, because I couldn't afford it.
Right.
And then when I could afford it, I didn't have to do it, because, like you said, I built the profile and visibility the right way, the sustainable way. But I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors, I think. And I think that's why we should be really careful about who we choose to kind of find our mentors and who we look up to. Yeah,
I agree. The speaking, I love speaking. I would, if I could only choose one of the things that I do, it would be speaking, because I absolutely adore it. And I think you can do something in 45 minutes with an audience. It's sort of magical. But I wouldn't have anything to speak about if I didn't do the actual work in the organization. So, and that's what keeps me on my toes. But it is, it is a very much of a skill. It is something you can learn.
Absolutely.
You help people all the time. What irritates me sometimes is when I come off stage and someone says, "Oh, it's amazing what you do. I could never do what you do." Yes, you could. It's all technique. It's all technique. It's all premeditated. That joke that I told that seemed like I'd only just thought of it, I tell that joke every time. You know, there's nothing magical about it. It is precision engineered, the speech. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, that the people that are doing a good job at that have worked incredibly hard. They're just not kind of turning up on stage, and it might look like they're just riffing with the audience, but they are not.
Yeah, absolutely. Blaire, tell us about your first speaking engagement, your very, very first speaking engagement.
Oh, well, this was fun, actually, because it was a bit of a fake it till you make it situation.
All been there.
So I was sent by one of my agents, one of Speaker Bureau, to Turkey.
Okay.
And I gave a speech there to some educational organization. I don't remember what they were called. And I had all my notes on cards because it was the first one I'd done. I thought I might forget it. I didn't use the cards, but I was finished after 30 minutes instead of 45 because I had left out a whole section. Of course, audience don't know about that.
Exactly.
Because then you know what you do say, not what you don't say. And then afterwards, people rallied around and said, "Oh, that was amazing. I could never do what you did. You're so down to earth." And the funny thing is, when people say you're down to earth, you're like, yeah, because they're just like a normal person, like you know. But they do treat you nicely when you're a keynote. So yeah, that was my first experience, and I thought, oh well, I'm going to be flying off to places like Turkey all the time, you know. And the next one was probably on the outskirts of Watford or something. Which it's not all glamour, is it? But yeah, that was my first experience, and what was so brilliant about it, apart from the fact that I got one under my belt and it was in Turkey, was that the audience found it funny. You know, now I know the jokes and I know what audiences typically find amusing. But then I was testing out new material, just like a comedian working in little clubs, you know, testing out their show. And to get that warm laughter back, that told me, okay, I'm doing something. Because ultimately, when you're at a conference and it's back-to-back speakers and it's boring, and slides after slides after slides, and when a speaker comes on who's funny, I mean, it's just such a relief.
It changes the dynamic.
It's like, oh my God, you know. So that was really reassuring.
That's really cool. Thank you. Okay, so I want to make sure that we get to I guess the question I like to ask most people, actually, apart from the main one right at the end, which I have given you a heads up on this time. But tell us about baby Blaire. You used the terminology already. Tell us about little Blaire growing up, and say until you got to the point of the BBC. Tell us about your journey along the way. Gosh,
well, I've always been a bit of a loudmouth. All right, so I wanted to be an actress. That was, my very first career ambition that I remember actually was a tightrope walker. But other than that, once I knew that I wasn't going to make it as a tightrope walker, it was an actress. And yeah, that's what I wanted to do until I was about 13, 14 years old. I was very seriously put off by my parents, who told me I would never work. I'd always be unemployed. You know, I should do something else instead, something more secure. They're from a generation that, you know, it's all about having a secure job and working your way up. And so I stopped doing the drama stuff and I went to university and read law. With no intention of becoming a lawyer, but that was just to placate, particularly my dad. But while I was there, I got involved in student radio, which was why I went to Warwick University, and they had at the time, I think they still do, a really, really active student union and a really, really good student radio station. And so that was my sort of, all right, I'll read law, but in my free time I'll work on the radio station.
Yeah.
And so that's, but actually, interestingly enough, although I went there because of the radio station, they also had a service, I don't know if it still exists, called Nightline, which is a student counselling service, and you're trained by the Samaritans, and you sort of manning the phones and the drop-in centre 12 hours at night. And I did that as well. And funnily enough, although the radio station led to my first career as a journalist, it was probably Nightline that showed me this incredible skill, like this truism that the answers lie in the other person. You know, that's what the Samaritans is all about. Samaritans will never tell you what you should do. They listen, they ask open, non-judgmental questions, and they allow the person who's calling to come up with their own decisions. And I learned that from Nightline, being a volunteer there at the age of 18. So when I then heard about coaching when I was in my late 20s, I was like, oh, I recognize that, because that's what I did at university. So isn't it interesting? You know, we're talking about where things start. So what you've got a combination of wanted to be an actress. So here I am, basically with a one-woman show doing keynotes. I mean, it's basically that, isn't it? I get to do that performance.
I actually wrote that down. That was something I did. It's the performance element, actually.
Yeah.
Like you, I've studied drama as one of the choices at the end of education, and it's interesting how that come around, actually. And I always wanted to be a country singer growing up, but I can't sing for toffee.
Oh,
my mum says I can, but so does everyone on Britain's Got Talent. So I'm a frustrated country music artist that loves spending time in Nashville. But interestingly, that you get the same vibe of doing what we do. So I get to travel, different audiences, different venues, different people, without the actual job of singing, which is a relief for me in the world. And I saw that as soon as you mentioned that, I thought, that's you. You are that show person, aren't you? You're there giving your all, engaging, and so you are performing in that sense.
Yes. And my mum, she used to run a children's theatre group when I was very small. So I went to that, you know, as a very little child, and saw that, and that was all part of my formative years. So you've got the acting bit, you've got the journalism bit, which for me is about being able to tell stories.
Yeah.
And you've got the Nightline Samaritans bit, which is the coaching element and the curiosity and the deep down belief that I do not know what's best for you, which then makes me, as a speaker, but also in the other work that I do, I'm not bringing, like a lot of people, I'm not bringing a lot of ego, like, right, I'm here now, everybody is fine, I will tell you what to do. I'm not. I'm like, okay, let's, like I said before about leadership, let's work it out together.
Yeah.
I've got 20 odd years of experience, and I will absolutely bring that to the table, but I'm not part of your business. You know your business, you know your people. What do you think's going to fly here? And that combination, you know, I think for anybody who's maybe at a turning point and thinking, what do I do next? I would go back and ask themselves that question you asked me, which allows them to see at my very core, what am I? And how can I bring those together into a sort of secret, unique source that I can then make into my business?
Nice. What's next for Blaire Palmer?
Well, what is next? So I'm really doubling down on the speaking. I mean, it was quiet, as it would have been for you over COVID, much more online stuff, and it's amazing to be back out there with audiences now. So I'm really leaning into that, trying to do much more international work. I now have a Middle East fee and a United States fee. So those were things that I wasn't so focused on before COVID.
Yeah.
But I think one of the reasons that matters, apart from just the fun of doing it, is that there is just so much change right now. And there are some very, very important things that I want audiences to be thinking about and asking themselves about. And so I think this is a sort of perfect moment for me to say, you know, just get me in front of some audiences. So that's really what's next. Longer term, you know, I'm in my 50s now. Early 50s, obviously, but I'm in my 50s now. My mum passed away earlier on in the year, and my dad.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's a big moment, I think, when you lose a parent. And my dad's in a care home. He's fine, but he's in his 80s. I think those things do make you think about your own older age and how you want things to play out. So I am starting to think about, okay, in 10 years' time, what do I want my life to be like? And really, it's pretty much like it is now, but with a caravan. So basically, living the life
I would have put money on that not being the next line. I didn't at all.
So living like this, But yeah, being able to, when I've got a long weekend or a sort of a quiet week, just be able to jump in the caravan with my dogs and go off.
Oh, lovely.
Just go off. Yeah.
What dogs do you have? Give them a name check.
Oh, I've got Casey, who's here. She always is with me. That she's a Cavapoo.
Oh.
And Humphrey, who's a bearded collie. He's always in the garden. He's quite elderly these days, but he's very sweet. And then, yeah, my daughter's talking about one more dog before she goes away to university. So maybe a poodle next. We're thinking a toy poodle.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, we're big dog people on the show. Well, I am, so therefore everybody else must be.
Yeah. Dogs are the best. Yeah.
Do you know what is? I think the thing I kind of want to start to bring us home on. I mean, I could talk to you for hours, but I think for everybody else, it's going to be a really long podcast. The reason I called my 2022 keynote tour Ride Across the Badlands, actually, there's two reasons. The first reason is the main reason. The reason I would give in public is that going into 2022, we kind of felt, okay, the pandemic was starting to kind of go this way. We had kind of Brexit done. We had lots of different challenges. It felt like a blank canvas. And then 2022 actually happened. And it's been, so we've been consistently going through that. And it kind of relate that to your Wild West kind of analogy earlier on, that I kind of felt like that. The main reason, by the way, why I called it A Ride Across the Badlands, it's one of the lines of my favorite country music tracks. And you'll appreciate this. When you're self-employed, you can call things whatever the hell you want. It doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
But I think as we go into like the last quarter of 2022 into the new year, you have things like the cost of living crisis and everything else is kind of in the background. Is there any parting wisdom you can give to people, just kind of regular Joes out there right now, on what they can do to kind of maintain some kind of resilience through these challenging times?
Yeah, that's really challenging, isn't it? Because we've been so resilient for so long. And you just can't ask people to just always be resilient. Actually, not everything should be a challenge. There should be some things that are easy. I think what we've been doing locally, my daughter's a competitive cheerleader, and her cheerleading club is an amazing community, amazing family. It supported everyone so much over COVID. And so we've initiated a project, or in fact 4 different projects within the gym to support families through the next few months, however long it's going to be. We've got very vulnerable families that are part of the club or part of the wider community that related to the club. And then we just got like people like me who are also feeling the pinch. Everyone will. We all live to the maximum. It's not like any of us have got all this extra money when our bills go up to, £1,000 a month. Yeah. So it's tough for everybody, but I mean, there's some very vulnerable families. So we've been doing a number of things. We're doing a clothes swap this coming weekend. So donate clothes, take clothes, basically free shopping. We're collecting food and making up basically groceries and essential bags for the most vulnerable families in our club. And we're exchanging services. So anyone who can exchange a service for free to other members or for a low fee, we're doing that to support each other. It's really incredible. So I think that the community is what will get you through. And if you're not part of something, then set something up. Create find someone who's got a Costco membership and go in together and buy your groceries and divide them up between you, buy in bulk. Add a couple of extra things to your groceries if you can afford to, and then distribute it out. Organize that a clothes swap amongst you and your friends, particularly for kids' clothes because they grow so quickly. Everyone benefits from that. I think that is what will get us through, is how we can support each other, because we're much better when we're together than when we're isolated and alone.
A beautiful message to bring us to a close on. But before you go, Blaire Palmer, I am now the MC of the O2 Arena in London. 20,000 people have paid their hard-earned money to come and hear you do your thing. You're sat back in the green room, sipping a Prosecco, you hear me boom out your name and your walk-on music kicks in. That song that motivates you, that lifts you, that gets you at peak state. Blaire Palmer, what would your walk-on track be and why?
I just love this so much. And last night I was going through all my favorite songs. I used to be in a band actually, so I'm a big music fan. but I decided on Led Zeppelin Ramble On.
Nice. Good job. I applaud you there.
Yeah. So,
Nice.
I mean, for one thing, when I was playing it yesterday, all of a sudden when it came on, I was like, oh, God, I love this song.
I love that. What a great choice. Thank you.
Yeah, that bass line, when that dong, 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 it's just fantastic.
You know,
also,
I'll be playing this as soon as we
oh
stop.
my God, everyone needs to go out, and if
Yeah.
you don't know the song, like definitely find it. But I was thinking about it, there's something about it's about a quest, so there's something very inspiring about that. It puts a spring in my step. But then when I also thought, oh, but I hope people don't think it means I'm going to ramble on. Like, you know, we've been talking a long time, haven't we?
I didn't even see the connection. That's great.
No, I thought about that afterwards. But no, fantastic song. And I would just, I'd leap onto the stage if they played that.
Brilliant. So for that choice, Ramble On will be added to the playlist for the whole of season 5 from every speaker, every attendee, and that will be a playlist available on Spotify. If you're a big fan of Spotify, tune into my channel where you've got all the playlists from the Find Your Voice events from all the attendee choices as well. I love the walk on music exercise, such a powerful lifting thing. Music changes your state almost instantly. And Blaire's mentioned an absolute classic that I've got to put on as soon as I stop recording this session right now. So Blaire Palmer, big round of applause.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nick.
What an amazing guest. Thank you so much for donating your busy time to be with us today and sharing your pearls of wisdom. Please do connect and reach out to Blaire for any questions. I'm sure she'll be delighted to hear from you. I'll pop her links in the bio, also the links to her HR Zone contributor page, mind fog then, so that you can check out all of our articles as well, which I strongly recommend you do. She's an amazing person. So that's it. So that's from me. Big thank you for tuning in today's session. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I've been tripping over my words a few times today, but I refuse to edit this thing as long as I live. So there we go. Stay well, be happy, take care, and I'll see you again next Monday. Please do hit like, subscribe, and whatever it takes to get you coming back. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.